Hello, do you ever get those times when you just want to crank up the worship music so it it just fills the room, and if you've got some good speakers as well, that probably make it even better, and you just bathe in worship. And for me, sometimes there are songs that are of worship that it's like I get hooked on them. I keep coming back to them, time and time again. I put them on repeat. I'll turn them on the next day and the next day. And yesterday, a friend of mine just sent a little video clip singing a worship song, and he knew that a few years ago it was one of those that I would play constantly, and it had a meaning, and that was "Sovereign Lord Over Me," by Aaron Keynes. It was a beautiful version by Worship Mob, if you ever come across them. And so I listened to the one friend sent, quite a few times, and then I put the Worship Mob version on as well. And I'm just like, I want the room to be filled with worship. And as you worship, there's that sense of the presence of God just coming and filling every part of who you are. And yeah, if you want to stop at this point, I don't mind. Go and put your favorite worship piece on and bathe in the presence of God. Let the aroma of worship surround you. Let the aroma of the presence of God surround you. And when I've done this, I'm like, what else have I got to do? I want to be in that place. And it's so easy to be too busy, distracted, everything else, and miss that sweet, sweet sense of the presence of God. He's over us. He's around us. In the valley, He's with us. On the hilltop, He's with us. When we're singing, He's with us. When we're crying, He's with us. When we're grieving, He grieves with us. When our hearts are just full of joy and bubble, He's with us. When life is tough, He's with us. Oh, what's to go? When life is easy, He's with us. Sorry about that. When life is easy, He's with us. He never leaves us. He never leaves us. He never leaves us. The Father's with us. Today, the Father's with you. He's with me. In John chapter 12, which is where we are today, it says it's 6 days before the Passover. And where's Jesus? He's with Bethany, in Bethany, where Jesus was raised from the dead. And they have dinner in Jesus' honour. And Lazarus is among those reclining at the table. That's quite a scene, isn't it? Imagine being there. I don't think I could take my eyes off Lazarus if I was there. I'd be like looking, going, "You were dead and gone, mate, and you're sitting here." I would, I would want to make the most of every interaction. But then you got Jesus there, and I'd want to make the most of every interaction. Just when you think about it, it's an extraordinary scene. When you think of Mary and Martha, you think of his sisters, and his sisters, their hearts must have just been, "I can't believe what's just happened." Days of tears, days of mourning. But in it, they'd had that core desire, that core hope that Jesus was the resurrection and the life. They called him because they were looking for a miracle. When he arrived, they hadn't taken their eyes off the possibility of a miracle. Though, in one way, they were projecting that miracle into one day, he will rise from the dead. And there they are. They've received their miracle. And sometime later, they've had their chance to process a little bit. Jesus is there with them. And Mary, I think Mary doesn't really know what to do. But what she has is this perfume. this very, very expensive perfume. This perfume of extraordinary value. And she takes it. You see, Mary, in her worship, at that point, she's understood something very deep about who Jesus is, that he's the resurrection. Her heart, her focus, her whole being has changed, probably been changed forever in that moment, where her focus, where she places her value, is Jesus. And in her act of worship, she breaks open the jar of expensive perfume and she starts to pour it out on Jesus' feet and worship. She cranks up the volume and fills the room. In this case, she fills the room with that fragrance of the presence, of the fragrance of the perfume. But there's the picture for us, the fragrance of beautiful, beautiful, beautiful worship. You see, for her in that moment, expensive perfume or not, it wasn't what had value. Her value system's been changed forever by seeing a brother sitting there alive. Her pure love for Jesus has gone beyond the value of stuff. But it's like, as the fragrance, as the perfume, as the smell fills the room, she's not an observer of the fragrance. She's a partaker of the fragrance. She's poured the fragrance and now using her hair, she wipes Jesus' feet. It struck me that in the Old Testament, the hair, the long hair or uncut hair, was that symbol of strength, symbol of set apartness. And it's like Mary in that moment is almost going one step further. She's giving over her set apartness. She's giving everything in that act of worship. She's oblivious to those around. She's caught up by her beloved Jesus. Worship is more than central. Worship is the room. The fragrance fills the house. The fragrance go beyond the house. I remember, in the spring, I put a smoke thing in my greenhouse just to clean out all the bugs and everything. Actually, in the autumn I did it. And the idea is you smoke the place and then leave it for 24 hours. And I went up the road and I was walking up the road and I looked back and it looks like there must be a fire in the greenhouse as the smoke from this thing was just coming out every little gap in the greenhouse. If you think a greenhouse is sealed, it's just pouring out everywhere. And it would be the same with this fragrance. The fragrance wasn't contained to the house. The fragrance was going to touch everything around. Do you know? And in it all, there was someone whose heart wasn't touched. His name was Judas Iscariot. You see, in that place of worship, other things do pop to the surface. And what was his motive? His motive was money. His motive was greed. His motive was self. And so he complains, saying, people put things in nice language. Well, it's really nice that she's done that, but think how many poor people we could have helped if we'd gone a different route and sold it instead. So it's worth a year's wages. And his motive wasn't that he cared for the poor. His motive was he could have some for himself. Jesus' reply, leave her alone. It was intended this perfume be saved for the day of my burial. You always have the poor among you. You will not always have me. Yeah. Isn't that awesome? It's crazy. I thought I turned my phone off before I started this. I want to encourage you now. Put on some worship. Fill the room. Value of it is worth more a year of wages. Bless you, bless you, bless you. Thank you for being with me.